Hello, and welcome back to an episode of the Preppy Podcast. I am so excited you're here for this episode. As always, it's a really good one. I am interviewing Lele of Lele Sadoughi, and I don't know about you guys, but I have a whole collection of her headbands, and actually she's one of the few jewelry designers as well that makes clip-on earrings. So I have quite a few of her earrings too. It was an absolute honor to talk to Lele and learn all about how she started her brand, her career before her own brand, her inspiration, how some of the collaborations have come up along the way. It's just such a good interview, and we even get sneak peeks into her office if you're watching on YouTube, so definitely check that out as well. But before we get into the episode, I want to remind you that you can shop a lot of the brands that I interview on the podcast at thepreppypodcast.com. You can also go back and listen to past episodes there and so much more. And even more exciting news, I know I've been teasing a Preppy Podcast retreat, so I'm finally going to share the dates so that you guys can save the dates for those, and tickets will go on sale soon. But it will be July 13th through 16th in the Berkshires at the Red Lion Inn. I am so excited. I've had many requests for this type of event, and I'm finally getting it organized for all of you. I'm describing it as Preppy Adult Summer Camp. It's going to be so much fun. So save the date for that, and I'll have more details to share later. All right, let's get into this week's episode. All right, so why don't you first let everyone know who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Okay, I'm Lele Sadoughi, and I make accessories, all kinds of accessories from jewelries, headbands, belts, bags, collars, sunglasses, hats. And I'm currently in Dallas. Our office is in New York, so I kind of straddle both.
Well, excellent. And I have been a big fan of yours for many years. I have one of your headbands on today, but I can't remember if I first started with one of your headbands or I had mentioned this to you when I had seen you in Dallas, but your clip-on earrings too, I'm a big fan of. So I've had a few of those, the big floral ones that you do that I love.
Our crystal lily earrings are coming up. Next year will be the 10th anniversary. So I actually started as jewelry.
Okay.
Expanded to all different categories. Obviously, a lot of people know us for the headbands.
Yep.
At the time, there was really not much else going on with headbands, and so we kind of started that whole process. We had a lot of wholesalers that were already buying jewelry, and at the time, no one had headbands.
Yep.
Saks, Women's, Nordstrom. So expanded to that and made it an every season buy.
I love that. Okay, so then I probably did start with your earrings, I would say. But I would love to start at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about you as a kid. Were you someone that was creative or entrepreneurial even at a young age? Or what was your childhood like?
I think creativity is often innate,
Mhm.
so it was something that I always was drawn to. So whether it was role playing, playing house, creative, drawing, painting, photography, I always went to that versus, my other sisters who were maybe more theatrical or more into sports. And
Okay.
so, my parents saw that I loved drawing, and so I in the middle of three girls, and I remember I always went to art classes, not my sisters.
Yeah.
So I do think that you kind of foster what you're into in the beginning, and if you're lucky enough to do what you're passionate about, then that's a win.
Totally. It's funny when I ask that question to a lot of people, they look back and they see little spurts of creativity or selling lemonade and being entrepreneurial. So I definitely get that sort of answer a lot. When it came time for college, then, where and what did you study? Was it something to do in the creative field or was it more the business side? I'd love to hear about that journey.
That's a good question because sometimes you're raised to think you should do something that's, a job in the business side, and I wanted to be creative. So that's why it came up with advertising, because I thought it was a bit of both.
Yeah,
And that's what I studied in the College of Communications at University of Texas in Austin.
excellent. So, from there, when you graduate with a degree in advertising, what did your career journey sort of look like leading up to starting your own brand?
I didn't go into advertising. I had
Oh,
plenty of internships, and I realized that I wanted to go into fashion. So I had my degree and went to LA. And remember, this is in 1999, so we're still doing fax machines. We're not quite emailing everybody at the moment. And I remember going into boutiques, looking at the labels and finding people that are local and submitting my resume. And I thought, I'm just going to start. And I think one of the best things right when you graduate is to work for a smaller company because you really can get your hands into so many different fields within a company.
yeah, that's such great advice. And I think also from that story, it sounds like you sort of took the initiative by trying to find labels, looking at stores, what the labels were and where they were located. I think when a lot of people ask me advice for when they're in college or graduating, I always say you have to put yourself out there and sort of do the work, whether it's, finding where you want to work and with publications, with magazines, the mastheads, all their emails are the same. It's once you figure out that formula. But it's like you have to have that mindset to take the time and do the work to sort of get ahead and find that place then that you should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe that any edge you have with networking, you should take it. And I've had a lot of people DM me, whether it's on Instagram or figuring out, like you said, figuring out my email. Do you have 10 minutes? I'm doing a college, roundup of different companies, or I'm interviewing people, and I'll take that call, or I'll reply back to that email, because I think that does take a lot of courage to go outside of the box and just say, you know what, I'm just going to reach out directly. And
Yeah,
sometimes it works out.
totally. So then you started your career in Los Angeles. What was that journey like? And leading up to that moment where you're like, you know what, I can do something on my own. I have this idea for a brand.
hmm I knew that I wanted to spend time on both coasts, LA and New York. And honestly, I knew that I'd have a better lifestyle and a bigger space, and a better value of living on a starter salary in LA rather than, living in a shoebox and a starter salary in New York City. So I was there for 3 years. In between LA and New York, I actually wanted to formalize my portfolio because I did study advertising, and I took I did a certificate course at Central St. Martin's in London. So I had this beautiful portfolio. By the time I um, wrapped up in LA, I worked for a designer for 3 years, and then went to New York with these beautiful drawings, of which I've never had time to do again. And I got a job as a designer at Rebecca Taylor. And so my experience, doing pattern making, managing all the pattern making team, then I moved into trims, and that's kind of where I fell in love with all the details. And so from there, doing all the trims and the buttons, the ribbons, the bows, the brooches, I moved into jewelry, and I did private label anywhere from Banana Republic back in the day to Club Monaco, Anthropologie, Neiman Marcus. And that's where I had the opportunity at J. Crew. And I'd only been doing jewelry for 6 months at that time. And so I had an exploratory interview at J. Crew. A friend of mine from high school was working there on the men's side. And they came back and said, we want to do jewelry. And there was no jewelry at the time.
Wow.
So the opportunity to launch a new category for such an iconic company is really amazing. And I always tell people, they're like, "Oh, can you do jewelry?" I'm like, "Sure, I can." And I'd only been doing it for a little bit of time, but like we said earlier, it's a little bit innate. You learn things, you can figure it out if you've been drawing and creating and doing trims and doing different things. It's just changing your canvas, but you can figure out how to do it. And so I was there for 5 years, and grew that department. I don't know if any of you remember, like the bubble
I
necklace,
was going to say that. Yep.
all the stacks of bangles.
Mhm.
It was a really wild time and a fun time to be at the crew.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. I mean, those are all such preppy iconic brands there,
Oh yeah,
Banana Republic, J. Crew. They are the ultimate preppy iconic brand. So what a great place to start your career journey. And I'm sure you learned so much there that you use then for your own brand, right?
yeah, absolutely. And, it was a time where it was all about the sweater sets and the cashmere and the loose ripped jeans, but wearing it with all the pearls and layers and layers and layers of necklaces and layers of bracelets. And I'm definitely a maximalist at heart and a retrophile. So, like, I love any vintage inspired pieces. And from there, I had learned so much. Even though I studied advertising, I knew how to create patterns and jewelry and, to go from two-dimensional. Why I say two-dimensional, because I'm just thinking of like patterns of clothing,
Yeah.
to three-dimensional sculptural like jewelry. Um, Kind of enabled me to think big and be like, okay, let's expand to headbands, to bags, to belts, to socks, to collars, and all those things. So when I started my company, I started as jewelry. I also had an opportunity to design for Tory Burch.
Okay.
And she was just lovely to work with, as an entrepreneur that I was doing my own line. And she's like, great, how about you work 3 days a week here, 2 days a week on your line? And so I was able to do both. And I did that. And I was pregnant. So I did that until I had my son, because I was like, sometimes you can't do it all.
Yeah.
And I think that's so I always joke around that I chose my child and my line, and that's what I came up with.
I think there's an important lesson there, and it's one of my mottos too. Is it's say yes and figure it out later. You can do it. You just maybe have to figure out how, and you figure it out along the way, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get today done, and you just compartmentalize and you do one thing at a time, and you'll make it through. And um, when people, I think it's nice to be able to say, like, I'm not getting it all done,
Yeah.
but I am doing 100% of my effort. My tank is full. I've worked as much as I can, so I feel good that I've maximized my day, and something's just gonna get done tomorrow.
Yeah. So when you launch your business, you mentioned that you started with jewelry and then later expanded into more accessories. So what did that launch look like? Like, were you launching with a website at that time? Were you doing trunk shows at stores across the country? How did you create from idea to Lele Sadoughi, your own brand?
Luckily, there was a lot of press and a lot of notoriety at J. Crew with the jewelry, and it made a lot of people very happy. And so, having that work done, and also figuring out how to get things made, what things should cost, where to get things made, going to factories, figuring out a lot of nitty gritty you know, on another person's dime, and really working for another company was the best education I could ever get.
Mm.
So when I started, I already knew where to make it, how long it should take, what things should cost, what is a void in the marketplace.
Mhm.
And I felt like there was a lot of entry level price point costume jewelry and a lot of really elevated and expensive. And I
Mhm.
wanted something that's kind of in the middle, which is great quality. My stuff ranges from 38 up to 350,
Mhm.
450. So really pieces that are thoughtful, but that also you can collect too.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, when I think of your brand, I think I've followed it throughout the years. Like I said, I've been a fan for many years. And I think you've done collaborations really well. So I'd love to hear about that because it sounds like it's a big part of your business. You've done some with Barbie, you've done some with Lily Pulitzer. I'd love to hear kind of the thought process behind that and how it's helped your brand grow.
So I do it a lot because I personally love the mashup. I love the challenge of mixing the DNA of, an iconic company, person, or brand to Lele Sadoughi. And I think I have to love it to be able to do it so much. And one of the first ones that I did was J. Crew, which was great. And like I said before, is keep your friends, use all the networks you can. And one of my coworkers at J. Crew then became head of crew cuts and said, "Would you want to do some kids ones?" And then the adult apparel got a hold of this, and they were like, "Let's do it for adults too." So I think it's so much about the satisfaction of connections and putting things together, and the challenge of mixing different DNAs and making something that feels true to the brand, to my DNA, as well as the other company, is something that I will always accept. And I really believe that you have to be innovative. You will find people that maybe see what you do and want to do what you do, and you have to be innovative and keep it fresh every season. So, like you mentioned, from Barbie to J. Crew to Lily Pulitzer to, using the fabrics of Liberty of London, using Swarovski stones, even iconic Marilyn Monroe, and just really outside of the box things like when I was doing, the face mask, we partnered with Italy. So just working with really happy brands that people really like and understand heritage and quality,
Mhm.
I'm happy to align myself with.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like you've done such a good job with it, and almost like you said, it keeps it fresh because I suspect, like myself, a lot of your customers sort of collect pieces, and so they'll want, one from the Barbie collection, one from the Lily collection, and they're building this curated collection then of your pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And displaying them beautifully. And, you see here too, you can see my display everywhere. And it makes me happy. It makes me happy to not only wear a different one for my personality for the day, wear big jewelry, wear
Yeah.
whatever, but you should change up your accessories as often as your clothing.
I agree 1,000%. So I also know that you have done things like wallpaper, for example. So how does that work then where, you're putting your spin on a completely different product that's not normally part of your assortment?
I started with how can I make my three-dimensional designs into something two-dimensional?
Mm.
And when you first started, you know me as the crystal lily earrings. So one thing that I did was, you know, drew pastel and bright colored because we're known for colors, love
Mhm.
color. Actually, the base of the wallpaper is based in this office. And if I swing my computer over, I can show you a bit of the wallpaper because I have it in my office too. Can you see it yet?
Oh yeah, now I can. Yep.
Wallpaper.
Yep.
Okay.
I love it.
So so basically, that was one of the starts that felt true to the brand is to do like floating lilies
Mhm.
everywhere. And then I also did, facet cut gems in our kind of iconic fun colors and florals to mix with gems. So it was really about taking these three-dimensional jewels and
Mhm.
putting them up on the wall in a really colorful repeat that just feels really joyful.
It almost is like going back to your roots. We talked about at the beginning of the podcast, going from designing patterns to then creating jewelry and these 3D things. And now with the wallpaper, it's sort of going back to the roots with that.
Yeah, yes, I
Yeah.
actually haven't really thought of it like that too, but it is definitely a different mindset when doing like a print versus building something.
Yeah. Now, with those collaborations, a lot of times, are you reaching out to those other brands and businesses? Or are they reaching out to you? Is it kind of a combination of the two? I bet a lot of people listening are curious, how those initial conversations go and how you set them up.
I think it's a combination of people just cold call reaching out to us. For instance, Major League Baseball reached out. They were on a mission to get more women-owned brands, to get more women fans, and we're like, "Wait a minute." And then you hear the stats where, um, as far as sports go, the biggest women fans are in baseball.
Interesting.
And so they kept saying, we want to do stuff that's special for the front two rows, right? The front rows. And anybody can get anything in any store with your favorite baseball team, but we want something, a little bit elevated.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of an aha moment like, okay, let's expand. So then we reached out to NBA
Okay.
and NFL after baseball MLB reached out to us. So it's definitely a combination like Barbie, the PR company was reaching out and this is before the movie and I remember I was advised on my team, I don't know, it's a little bit juvenile. I'm like, I don't care. This is iconic.
Yeah.
I'm still happy that my daughter's 10 and a half and she's still playing Barbies or dressing Barbies. I just went to an estate sale this past weekend and I got some of the original Ken and Barbie clothing. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I had to have it.
Yes.
Part of it are brands that you grew up with that you totally respect, and there's so much nostalgia attached to it. And so it's a combination of reaching out. I mean, I've done many things with Love Shack Fancy. Our kids were in the same class. We're like,
Oh,
hey, let's do something together. I
yeah.
know the girls from Stony Clover Lane, and we're like, let's do something. A friend of mine, um, an employee of mine used to know someone who worked at Lilly Pulitzer, connected us. So really, you never know who you're talking to. You never know who that person's going to be in 10 years.
Yeah.
And you should keep up all relationships that you have. And I think it's just extremely healthy to expand and just think outside of the box and challenge yourself to work with all these fun companies.
Definitely. So we've talked a lot about relationships, and it sounds like relationships are something that's important to you and your brand. And I feel the same way. Do you have any tips then for listeners on relationship building or connecting with someone from a past career? Like anything that you do that you think really helps keep relationships strong or recognize them?
Yeah. And I will say from a very young age, my parents made me go up to the counter and ask for another key at the hotel or pick up the phone and change the reservation from a really little age where
Mhm.
that can be, you can have a bit apprehension to just do that.
Yeah.
And I think I became comfortable doing that and just asking for things because
Mhm.
you don't get anything without asking for them or putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
So I believe a lot of it is luck. It's a combination of opportunity and luck, and you're not going to have the opportunity if you're sitting behind your doors. So, getting out there, and at the end of the day, you might think it's a numbers game, and you ask 500 people, and if six people get back to you, then that's a win.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it. I also think, continuing relationships, a good thank you note is so easy. And if you're someone who's more
Yeah.
introverted, that goes a long way and leaves a lasting impression on people. So there's so many ways that you can continue relationships or strengthen them. And those are
And when
some
I
things.
hire somebody, I love it when they even on an email or a letter or something and just really pause and take a moment to say thank you. I
Mhm.
probably need to be better at that, but I really do appreciate that. That's a really, really good point as well. And just acknowledging like thank you for that connection and paying it forward.
Yep, 1,000%. So, you've had some great press, some great celebrities are fans of your products. You've done some amazing collaborations. What's been for you personally the biggest pinch me moment? Something that you're really proud of?
Sarah Jessica Parker, I mean, that's just the queen of fashion, and that was
Mhm.
thrilling, and that was such a New York moment because our stores on Bleecker Street being neighbors, literally sharing a wall. So yeah, Sarah Jessica Parker's been my neighbor, and she had just gone in to see her neighbor, and we were sharing our internet together while they were, building up their place and helping them, like, "What do you guys need?" And, she's like, "I love all these jewels. Can we put them on shoes?" And like you said earlier, say yes and figure out how to do it afterwards. I said, "Absolutely, I can do this." Figured it out, presented it on a beautiful, presentation, and really kind of just made it happen, although I hadn't done shoe clips before, and I got the matching accessories to each clip. So we really got to bring it around and just doing a photo shoot together. And that's a moment where I put in the contract that we will both appear in the photo shoot, that we will both do the launch party.
Yes.
And she said yes. So you got to ask for those
Yeah.
things. And she was delightful and lovely and exceeded my expectations. So that's probably a pinch me moment.
That's so amazing. I mean, yes, she is so iconic, New York and fashion. So that's so cool. Um, Now, I'm curious, what's been your best form of marketing? And nowadays, there's so much with influencers, traditional press. We talked about YouTube before we started recording. What's really worked for your brand in terms of initially getting the word out when you started, but even continuing to be relevant and in front of people today in this digital age?
Changing. I think what you're used to doing, you can't do it next season. And I think that you've got to also, once you feel comfortable, you have to move on to your next thing with design, with marketing, with everything.
Yeah.
And I think that being true to your DNA can allow you to expand to all different forms of communication.
Mm.
So even when we were all kind of in lockdown and I started to do live conversations, because like I can talk forever, I can talk about things. People are interested in like, how do you make this? What do you do? You know, this is our new Brigitte headband, named
So,
after Brigitte Bardot, who would wear the wide, you know, the wide flat kind of
yeah.
60s bands that feel really modern too. And just kind of telling the story behind each of these pieces.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it is more of that lo-fi, just getting on. And I think Instagram has really changed the game where you are accessible. You
Yeah.
can DM a person, you can just get on and go live, you can talk about things, and it's much more fluid than direct and more less formal than
Mhm.
direct, your website.
Mhm. I think you do such a good job at that, following your account in addition to your business account, but you do a great job of showing, like, behind the scenes and, how you're wearing pieces in your natural life that work for you from your brand. I think that's
You
important.
wear it
Yeah.
all the time, yeah.
So I'm not sure if you are a big reader or podcast listener or love going to conferences, but I always love asking this question to guests because I get so much out of it, and I feel like my listeners do as well. What's a resource that you could share with people, whether it's a great book you've read on business or a great conference you went to or a newsletter or website? What's something that they could use?
Hmm. Okay, well, I've shown you my desk, but I have some things here too, and I'm just going to show you what is top of my desk right now.
I love
Um,
this.
this is a book by Carol Tannenbaum, and it's called Fabulous Fakes.
Oh.
And I love it because there is so much history in jewelry and costume jewelry, and just really kind of understanding your field
Hmm.
and who's done what, and how to also have your own DNA with things. I also have here how to raise successful people. So
Okay.
I heard Esther speak once, and I got the book. Let me see. I think she signed it too. I have to check. And I've had it, and um, two kids. So making pretty things and making pretty people, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love that little show and tell too,
Oh, it's
an
funny. I
actual
didn't even know
behind the
that you
scenes.
were gonna ask that question, and usually I don't know, but my daughter and I, well, she's really into organizing, and she decided to do the whole pantry yesterday, and so I did the like in the bar area, and for some reason I had all these like beautiful books in there, and I pulled these out because I'm like, I think I need to reread them. So
Yeah.
sometimes you already have them in your house, and it's a good refresher to study up again.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I always keep some of my favorites in my office in case I wanna check back on them. So, since this is the Preppy Podcast, I always ask everyone, what does preppy mean to you? So how would you describe preppy?
I had this conversation with my daughter all the time because this word has resurfaced in a different meaning for my children.
Mhm.
And she's like, "Oh, that's preppy." And she'll be wearing her hair loose, like a Southern California girl with like wide with loose sweatpants and a surfing sweatshirt. And she's like, "I'm preppy." I'm like, "Really? That is the antithesis of what I know as preppy."
Yeah.
So I think preppy to me is very thoughtfully coordinated and presentable and colorful and pretty and fun. And
Yeah.
and I start with coordinated because I instantly think of, like, for instance, I have raffia here, right? But then I have
Mhm.
like a tan stripe here, and then I have like a men's undershirt and then a leopard thing. Like,
Mhm.
it's all kind of quirky, but in a way, is it a little bit preppy
Yeah.
because it's like a little coordinated effort? And I think that, well, I mean, I love a matching moment. So, and for now, my daughter will still match with me. So
Oh,
I
that's
think that's
good.
part of preppy too.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect answer. I love, the coordination is definitely preppy. What would be your dream collaboration or person to wear some of your pieces? Do you have one that you haven't done yet and might be on your bucket list?
I mean, a lot of the people that I dream of are just super glamorous, and they might not even be around today. Like, we just did something with the estate of Marilyn Monroe because just such an icon, and she would wear costume jewelry and
Mm.
just glamour in every way.
Yeah.
And other people too, there's so many, and it doesn't even have to just be like a Hollywood starlet. I mean,
Yeah.
so many musicians, so many artists.
Mhm.
I would love to see a lot of different artists wear things because of that creativity and wear it in just like a wild and different way.
Yeah.
When we did the styling with for the Sarah Jessica Parker, she put all the shoe clips right here on a square neck dress, and I just thought, "What genius." So
Yeah.
working with different stylists that makes you think of your products in a different way is really inspiring too.
Mhm. Definitely. Oh my gosh, I have to dig up a picture and find, how she styled the shoe clips. That sounds awesome.
Google that one, you'll find it very quickly.
Yeah. So anything coming up, any sneak peeks you can share, anything you're working on right now?
Well, we're just releasing now. Every year we do a contest for like a either usually a headband, but
Mhm.
a national contest for design. And we get submissions. And I get submissions from everybody from school children to professionals to mothers to everybody and anybody. And we go through the applications, whether they're drawing something beautiful or simply describing an idea.
Mhm.
And this year we did a headband with Paris and London. So two location ones. And the winner was actually going there over Thanksgiving and was super inspired by the architecture and just really got into it and was able to take pictures of herself in those locations. So it was just really special. And I think a moment to embrace the community that does collect and really do something special. So that's something coming up, and we do also a lot of celebration pieces. It's March, so Easter and St. Patrick's
Mhm.
Day and all that coming out. But we also have some other really big ones too. So you have
Oh,
to
so
follow
exciting.
follow us to find out.
Definitely. So that leads me then to my last question is where can people shop? Where can they follow along and stay up to date?
Good question. So a lot of people say, "Well, how do you pronounce your name?" I'm like, "Lele." My nickname's Lele, Lele Sadoughi, and you can find us on our website where we have everything. And we show lots of sneak peeks on stories and our feed and Instagram and TikTok. So it's Lele Sadoughi, and I've also had such great partners. We have been selling since the beginning too. So Neiman's and Saks and Nordstrom and Bloomies and Shop Up, Revolve, major, all majors plus boutiques around you, which we have listed on our website. But also, I'm so proud to have our 5 stores. So we are in Dallas and Houston, Nashville, Newport, California, and New York on Bleecker Street in the West Village.
Wow. That's amazing. I think having brick and mortars, is such an amazing feat because that's a whole other team to manage.
It is definitely a whole other team, and because I am so wide on assortment, being at another store, your handbags could be here and your belts could be here and your jewelry in another area. And so it is a way to see the whole world of Lele, if you will, together. And that's to me the most gratifying, where you go back going back to the coordination where you can see that, like, okay, the glasses go with this, go with this, go with this, and it's a whole moment.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lily. This was so great talking with you and learning more about your business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Preppy Podcast. I hope this put a little prep in your step for the day. Please subscribe, rate, and review on wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow along with @the Preppy Podcast on social media.